Hey everybody, welcome to another deep dive. This time it's going to be all about idioms. And you know those tricky little phrases that can make or break your ability to sound like a natural English speaker? So we're going to be talking about why idioms matter and how they can really boost your fluency. And we're going to be looking at some of the most common ones, like, cost an arm and a leg, or let the cat out of the bag, and really break them down so you can understand them, and even more importantly, start using them in your own conversations. So if you're ready to level up your English and have some fun along the way, well then let's dive right in.
I'm excited to deep dive into these idioms. They're not just about sounding fluent, though. They're really a window into a culture's soul. They reflect history and humor and even like anxieties.
Yeah.
Like, for example, break the ice. I mean, think about it. It probably came from, those icebreaker ships clearing paths through frozen waters. And now we use it for, those awkward first moments in social situations.
Wow, I never thought of it that way. And yeah, starting a conversation with a stranger can sometimes feel like you're navigating a frozen sea. So besides sounding cool, are there any other benefits to kind of adding these idioms to my vocabulary?
Oh, definitely. Imagine you're watching your favorite English movie and everybody's laughing at a joke and you just don't get it. It's probably because you're missing the cultural context that's like embedded in those idioms. So they really unlock this deeper meaning and let you understand humor and expressions and even literature.
Okay, so it's not just about like sounding like a native speaker, it's about understanding the cultural nuances too. But let's be real for a second. There are tons of idioms out there. Where do I even begin?
Well, the good news is you don't need to memorize like a whole dictionary's worth of idioms. Starting with a few common ones can make a huge difference. And today we're going to explore some of those greatest hits. And I bet you'll be surprised how many you already recognize.
Awesome. Let's dive into those examples then. What's first up on our idiom hit parade?
Well, we already touched on break the ice, which means to ease into a conversation. So imagine you're at a networking event, you're feeling a bit lost. You could break the ice by asking someone about their work or even complimenting their name tag. I know it's bold, but it works.
I love it. A compliment's definitely a smoother way to break the ice than just like awkwardly standing in silence. So what's next on our list of must-know idioms?
How about hit the nail on the head? This one's all about being perfectly accurate, like nailing something right on target. So, for example, if you're explaining a tricky concept and I said, you hit the nail on the head, it means you explained it clearly and concisely.
Ooh, I like that one. It's way more descriptive than just saying you're right, which can feel a bit bland. It's like you're giving someone a verbal high five for their accuracy.
Exactly. And it shows you're engaged in the conversation,
Yeah.
not just passively listening.
All right, what about an idiom for when something is way too expensive? Because let's be honest, that happens a lot.
Oh, you're talking about cost an arm and a leg. We use this one to exaggerate the price of something, like that designer bag you've been eyeing but just can't justify buying.
Oh, tell me about it. My rent already costs an arm and a leg, so I guess sticking to window shopping for that bag is the way to go. Okay, speaking of things we might want to keep secret, what about let the cat out of the bag?
Ah, yes, that one's all about revealing a secret. Often unintentionally. Imagine you're planning a surprise party for a friend, but then you accidentally mention it to them. Oops, you just let the cat out of the bag.
Oh, I've definitely been there. It's the worst feeling. Though sometimes spilling the beans can be intentional, right? Like when you're bursting with exciting news and can't wait to share it.
You're right. Spill the beans does imply a deliberate act of revealing information. Like say your friend asks what you're getting them for their birthday, they're practically begging you to spill the beans. But with let the cat out of the bag, it's often an accident.
I see the difference now. That's really helpful. Okay, what about when we're feeling a bit under the weather, but not like deathly ill?
Under the weather perfectly captures that feeling of being mildly sick or just not your best. When you're sniffling, a bit tired, and need a good dose of tea and Netflix. You wouldn't use it for serious illnesses, though.
So it's like the idiom equivalent of I'm fine when you're actually kind of feeling blah. Got it.
You got it. Now, before we move on to more examples, I want to point out something interesting that our sources mentioned. You can often guess the meaning of an idiom just by paying attention to the context. It's like a linguistic puzzle. And figuring it out on your own makes it stick in your memory better.
That's a great tip. It's almost like the conversation itself gives you clues. I like that it makes learning idioms feel less like memorization and more like detective work. Okay, so we've got a good handle on these first few idioms and their definitions, but how do we actually start using them in real life?
That's the million-dollar question, and we'll tackle it right after this quick break. Stay with us. Welcome back to our deep dive into the wonderful world of English idioms. We've been talking about how idioms can really unlock cultural understanding, but they can also reveal fascinating regional differences. Like an idiom that's perfectly normal in American English might sound totally strange in British or Australian English.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's like different dialects within the same language can have their own set of idioms. That makes sense, I guess. It's kind of like how a subway in New York is called the Tube in London.
Precisely. It just highlights how language is always evolving and adapting
Yeah.
and, creating these unique pockets of expressions. So paying attention to who you're speaking with and their cultural background is really key to using idioms effectively.
Right. You wouldn't want to accidentally use an idiom that goes over someone's head, or worse, is interpreted completely differently. Okay, before we get back to those juicy examples, can we touch on something that's been on my mind?
Of course, what's up?
Well, I get that idioms can make you sound more fluent and all, but it feels a bit like I'm just trying to impress people. Is there something deeper to it than that?
That's a great question. And you're right, it's not just about sounding cool. Idioms are more about connection. They create this instant bond with someone who understands the reference. It's like sharing a secret language, hinting at a shared cultural understanding.
Ooh, I like that. It's like when you make eye contact with someone across the room who's singing along to the same song you are. There's that unspoken connection.
Exactly. And that's why practicing and exposing yourself to real-life conversations, movies, podcasts, anything where native speakers are using idioms is so crucial. You start to internalize them, understand the nuances, and use them organically.
You know what I've noticed? That watching British sitcoms has helped me pick up some British idioms. It's fun to try them out on my British friends and see if they get it.
So you're already becoming an idiom detective. But remember, even seasoned detectives make mistakes sometimes. Speaking of which, let's revisit those common pitfalls to avoid. Using an idiom incorrectly can be a bit like showing up to a formal event in a swimsuit. Just not the right fit.
Oh, I can imagine the confused stares. But it's more than just awkwardness, right? There's a risk of misunderstanding the meaning altogether.
You're absolutely right. Take "I'm all ears," for instance. It means you're listening attentively. But imagine someone mixing it up with "I'm all thumbs," which means clumsy or awkward. The entire message gets lost in translation.
Yeah, I guess it's like saying you're under the weather when you're actually ecstatic about something. It just wouldn't make sense.
Exactly. Another trap is overusing idioms. It's like trying to make a statement by wearing every piece of jewelry you own. It's overwhelming and distracts from the overall message.
So moderation is key. It's about sprinkling them in naturally, not force-feeding them into every sentence.
Perfectly put. And finally, that literal translation trap. Idioms are so deeply rooted in their language of origin that trying to translate them word for word often creates nonsensical gibberish.
It's like trying to explain the concept of raining cats and dogs to someone who has never experienced a downpour. The imagery just wouldn't translate.
Precisely. So learning idioms within their context and understanding their true meaning is crucial, but let's not get bogged down in the technicalities. We were about to get back to those exciting idiom examples, right?
Oh, yes. We left off with spill the beans. What other gems do we have?
How about once in a blue moon? This idiom describes something that happens very rarely, like seeing a blue moon in the sky. You might say, "I only climb my oven once in a blue moon." Or, "That comedian performs live once in a blue moon, so tickets are super expensive."
I love that. It's so much more expressive than just saying rarely. It conjures up this image of something magical and elusive.
Exactly. It paints a picture with words. Okay, here's one you might relate to get cold feet.
Ooh, I know this one. It's that feeling of nervousness or hesitation right before doing something big, like getting married or giving a speech.
Right on. Imagine you're about to go on a roller coaster, but as you get strapped in, you suddenly start having second thoughts. You could say, "I'm getting cold feet about this ride. Maybe I should sit this one out."
Ah, I can totally picture that. And I bet the person behind you in line wouldn't be too thrilled. Okay, what about to see eye to eye? That one sounds pretty literal.
It is straightforward. To see eye to eye simply means to agree with someone. Like if you and a friend are planning a trip and you both agree on the destination, you could say, "We see eye to eye on where to go for vacation."
Oh, so it's like saying we're on the same page, but a bit more visually descriptive.
Exactly. And it emphasizes that you're in agreement, that you're both looking in the same direction, metaphorically speaking.
Okay, this is fun. What's next?
Let's try to cut corners. This one means to do something quickly and cheaply, often compromising quality in the process.
I've definitely heard this one before. Like if someone is renovating their kitchen but trying to save money, they might cut corners by using cheaper materials or hiring inexperienced workers.
Perfect example. It often implies that there will be negative consequences down the road, though. You get what you pay for, as they say.
That's true. It's like trying to bake a cake without following the recipe properly. You might end up with a flat, dense mess instead of a fluffy, delicious cake.
Exactly. Okay, ready for one last idiom before we wrap up this section?
Hit me with it.
To beat around the bush.
Yeah.
This one describes someone who is being indirect or evasive in their communication, avoiding the main point.
Oh, this is a classic. Like, imagine you need to ask your boss for a raise, but you're nervous to bring it up directly.
Right.
So instead, you start talking about your recent accomplishments and how dedicated you are to the company. You're essentially beating around the bush by not stating your real intention.
Spot on. It often happens when we're trying to avoid confrontation or deliver bad news.
Or when we're trying to hint at something without being too obvious, maybe asking for a favor indirectly. It can get pretty awkward, though, if the other person doesn't pick up on the hints.
You're absolutely right. Clear and direct communication is usually the best policy, even if it's uncomfortable at times.
Well, I would say we've covered a lot of ground in this idiom exploration. I'm feeling way more confident about understanding and using them already.
That's great to hear. But we're not quite done yet. There's one more important element we need to discuss, the ever-evolving nature of language. We'll tackle that right after a quick break. Stay tuned.
Okay, and we're back for more idiom fun. You know, we've talked about why idioms matter. We've explored a bunch of common ones and even learned how to avoid some embarrassing mishaps. But before we wrap up, you mentioned something about language always evolving.
Yeah, it's true. Language is like a river, constantly flowing and changing shape. New words and phrases are emerging all the time, and idioms are no exception. Think of it as a never-ending treasure hunt for new ways to express ourselves.
Okay, that's exciting, but it also sounds a bit overwhelming. How can I keep up with all these new idioms popping up? It's not like there's an Idiom of the Month subscription box I can sign up for.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
Yeah.
But you're right, it can be a challenge. The key is to stay curious and pay attention to the language around you. Listen to how people talk, in everyday conversations, in movies, podcasts, even in songs. Read books and articles, and don't be afraid to, underline or jot down phrases that sound unfamiliar.
So it's like being a language detective, always on the lookout for clues.
Exactly. And if you encounter an idiom you don't recognize, don't just let it slide by. Look it up. Ask a native speaker, or even try to deduce its meaning from the context. It's like flexing your mental muscles and expanding your understanding of the world.
You know, one thing I've realized is that learning idioms isn't just about improving my vocabulary. It's like gaining access to a whole new layer of cultural understanding.
You're spot on. Idioms often carry the weight of history, tradition, and cultural values. For example, the idiom, "to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders," reflects a cultural emphasis on individual responsibility and resilience. Understanding these deeper meanings really adds another dimension to your communication.
It's like realizing there's a whole backstory behind a seemingly simple phrase, and suddenly it becomes much more meaningful.
It is. It's like discovering a secret code that unlocks a deeper understanding of a culture's way of thinking and seeing the world.
Now, I know we've been focusing mainly on American English idioms in this deep dive, but you mentioned earlier that idioms can vary between different English-speaking countries. That's something I'm really curious about.
It's a fascinating aspect of language. Even though English is this global language, it takes on unique flavors and expressions in different regions. For example, in British English, you might hear someone say, "Bob's your uncle," to mean everything is sorted or it's easy. An American might be totally lost if they heard that.
Hi, I can imagine the confusion. Who's uncle? What does Bob have to do with anything? It makes me realize how important it is to be mindful of those regional variations, especially when traveling or interacting with people from different cultures.
Absolutely. It's all part of being a culturally sensitive communicator. And the more you expose yourself to different dialects and accents, the more you'll appreciate the richness and diversity of the English language.
I'm starting to think that learning idioms is less about reaching a destination and more about enjoying the journey of continuous discovery.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It's about embracing the challenge, having fun with language, and never losing that sense of wonder and curiosity.
Well, I think it's safe to say that our deep dive into the world of idioms has been a huge success. I feel equipped to not only understand those tricky phrases, but also to use them with confidence and even a bit of flair.
And remember, the more you use them, the more natural they'll become. Don't be afraid to experiment, make mistakes, and learn from them. That's all part of the process.
That's right. Keep those ears open, those minds curious, and those tongues wagging with all those colorful idioms. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into a fascinating topic.